We've now read in some details about our campaign, and we're ready to actually print them on the screen as is shown on this mock-up right here. So we need to somehow get these little boxes together, and each box should show one individual metric to our users. Now we've already used a component from Semantic UI React once already that looks an awful lot like these things right here, and that was the card group component. So if I go back over to my Semantic UI documentation, I've already pulled up the docs for the card component. And if I do a search for group, I can go down to the example where we saw the card group component in action. So here it is right here. So we pretty much want to probably put the actual metric, like a value, maybe the address of the owner or the balance of the campaign or whatever it is, here as the bold text. And then maybe the gray text in this case could be the name of the metric, like something that says, hey, here is the address of the manager of this campaign. And then to make sure that our users really understand what these numbers mean, we could probably put a little text description of each individual metric right underneath it. So that'll just educate our users on what the purpose of the manager is, or what the purpose of the number of requests is, or whatever else. So as a quick reminder, to get a card group component to show up, we can make an array of items that will have objects inside of it with a header, description, and meta property. And then we can pass that array to a card.group component as a prop called items, like so. So let's give this a shot. I'm going to flip back over to my code editor. I'm inside of my campaign show component still. And just like we did back on campaign index, let's make a little helper method that will create this card group for us. So down right here, I'm going to make a new method and we'll call it, how about render cards? Because that's pretty much what it does. So inside of here, we're going to make a list of items. Previously, we had iterated over a collection, right? We had the list of all the different campaign addresses, and we mapped over that thing and created a separate item for each one. But this time, we don't have a collection of anything to iterate over. This time, we're doing a very custom card for every individual metric that we want to show on here. So we're not going to do a map this time. We're going to do something much more similar to the documentation that you see over here. We're going to write out this array manually and specify each individual card, its header, its meta, and its description property. All right, so back over here, we're going to make our array of objects. And each of these is going to have a header, a meta, and a description. Now we said that the header should be the actual value or the actual metric that we're trying to report. So we need to now pull all these different properties right here off of our props object, because we eventually want to make an actual item for each of these. So I'm going to do a little bit of destructuring right above this items array. I'm going to pull off each of these different properties that we just passed in to this component. So I'm going to say const balance. I want the, not the owner, the manager, the minimum contribution, the requests count, request count, and approvers count. And we're going to destructure all that from this .props, like so. So now for the first item object right here, we can pass in the header of, say, just manager. So that will get our manager to display really nice and bold on the individual card. And then we could put on a meta description to this thing to really label it for our users. So maybe for the manager, we give this a meta of something like address of manager, and then a description to tell our users exactly what this thing is for. So maybe we give it a description of something like the manager created this campaign and can create requests to withdraw money, like so. So that's just going to educate our users and give them a good idea of, hey, what is the manager for? Now, one real quick thing here, I have not placed in any commas, so I'm going to make sure that I do that right now at the end of the header and meta lines. Now, before we go any further and create any other items, let's create this actual component and get it to display on the screen, just so we can verify that this is going to end up looking pretty much like what we want it to look like, right? So underneath the items array, I'm going to return a card.group. I'm going to pass in our list of items, like so. Let's not forget to import the card group component at the very top from Semantic UI. So up at the top of my file, I'm going to make sure that I import card from Semantic UI React. And then finally, we need to make sure that we call this render cards function from within our render method. So down inside of our render method, right underneath the H3, I'll call this dot render cards, like so. All right, so let's now test this out in the browser and just make sure that the item right here that we've created already is going to show up the way we expect. So back over here. All right, okay, so we don't have the address just yet. Let's refresh this page and we should definitely see the address appear on the screen. So I'll refresh. And there we go. Okay, so hey, maybe it's not quite perfect just yet. You'll see that the address is very long, so it actually breaks out of our card right here. But we can address that with some styling really quickly. So we're going to add in a little custom style here. This items object takes not only the header, meta, and description properties, but it actually takes one other property as well. And this is an optional property that we've not used before. It takes a property called style, and that can customize how this individual card right here, or the card that is created by this object, gets styled on the screen. So I'm going to make sure that I add a comma at the end of my description over here. So there's my comma. And then I'm going to add on a style property. And we're going to give this a style of overflow wrap break dash word. So that's going to cause that really long address to break into two and wrap down to the line underneath it, so it doesn't kind of escape out of our card. Remember that we could put on that flow property of true and get our card to expand all the way to the right-hand side of the screen. But our mockups specifically show these cards kind of fitting together in a nice style like this. So I really want to just kind of constrain the width of each card. All right, so we've got the style right here. Now do take note, we've got overflow. Flow has a lowercase f and a capital W. So just make sure you get that capitalization correct. And then we'll save this file and see how we're doing. All right, so back over here. Yep, there we go. So now it's nicely kind of wrapping itself down to the line underneath it. All right, so I think this looks pretty darn good. Let's take a pause here. We're going to come back in the next video and we're going to create item objects for all of our other properties coming from a campaign as well.